retelling the story of two notorious witches, the story of Eleanor Shaw and Mary Phillips. Title page of the document from the trial. Conclusion of a trial against Eleanor Shaw and Mary Phillips, London, printed for F. Thorne, near Fleet Street. At Northampton Assize, on Wednesday the 7th of March, 1705, for bewitching a woman and two children, tormenting them in a sad and lamentable manner till they died. With an account of their strange confessions about their familiarity with the devil and how they made a wicked contract with him to be revenged on several persons by bewitching their cattle to death, etc., and several other strange and amazing particulars. Though there are many stories of wickedness in their adult lives, little is known of their upbringing and adolescent lives. Eleanor, estimated to be born around 1683 in Cotterstock, grew up without education by all accounts, though through the story you will see how much wit she actually had. But let's return to the story. The fact that Cotterstock was one of the smallest villages in the area, so that 4/5 of population were exempt from hearth tax in the year 1673. General population consisted of 24 families at this time. The number grew to 30 families in 1801. Eleanor was born into a settlement of farmers and peasants, though nothing is known of her parents. Her story picks up at age 14, when she meets her future accomplice, quote, partner in wickedness, Mary Phillips, oh so wicked, of which only place of birth is known, being born in Oundle. Eleanor and Mary were described as familiars with friendly correspondence, seen as honest and hard-working by her neighbors. Eleanor had a good reputation, all of which changed when she turned 21, when she began what could be described as her sexual escapade, exposing her body for any men that would pay her any mind, becoming known as Nell the Strumpet in surrounding villages of Oundle, Glapthorne, Bannerfield, Southwick, and several other places adjacent to Cotterstock. Strumpet, for those of you who don't have a clue what that means, as I didn't, is an old derogatory term for a sex worker. People of old age, as well as children of 4 and 5, knew who she was, yelling, "There goes Nell the Strumpet, there goes a witch," anytime she would only so much as peek her head out her own front door. Enraged by constant terror her neighbors put her through, Eleanor swore revenge on her enemies. Being that Mary was her partner in knitting and bedfellow, Eleanor expressed her desire to put her soul up for purchase so their wills might be exacted. Mary, being a good friend, jumped at the opportunity, or might have been taken up by Eleanor's conviction. Who knows? In communication, however, they agreed that signing a contract with the devil would provide them with the power they needed to exact their vengeance on their enemies. Being that they were partners in utter wickedness, they offered themselves up to the devil in union. Being that the devil is omnipresent, by the time they decided to summon him, he was already waiting for them. Around midnight on Saturday, the 12th of February, 1704, the devil appeared to the two of them in the shape of a tall black man, which scared them greatly. Like, no shit, it's the middle of the night, and a person comes into your house unexpectedly. I don't care who you are, you're gonna get your ass whooped right after I stop shitting myself. Bloody hell. They settled down after the devil took Eleanor's hand and began to assure them of his intentions. The devil presented himself as one of the creators, as well as being one of them, having the power to bestow them with power that was given to him, in exchange for giving their souls up for only a year and 2 months. He would assist them with whatever they desired. Now, the thing that sparked my interest is the fact that he said he was one of the creators as well as being one of them. To me, speaks of his human nature. As much as he is a fallen angel and evil in his own right, he still retains his humanity. So the celestial may not be as dehumanized as we would like to believe, but actually be as human as we are, with maybe some additional sprinkle of otherworldly magic in there, right? Does that make sense? Let me know. Now, back to the story again. I get sidetracked a lot. He has some chilling adventures of Sabrina shit going on, as he produced a small piece of parchment on which they were to give their consent. He used their blood to write an infernal covenant, which they extracted by pricking their fingers. After signing the contract with their own hands, they spent the night getting to know each other carnally. Rawr, I guess. Which doesn't sound that bad, besides having to prick yourself and signing some odd contract in blood. Spending the night with the devil doesn't sound that bad, does it? He's been around the block for several millennia. He's probably into some kinky stuff. Being that he is celestial, he probably doesn't need to get a shot of penicillin to be sanctified. Well, maybe one, just in case. Let's get back to it again. In the morning, the devil told Eleanor and Mary that they were substantial witches as any other witch in the world, and that their will would be exacted with the assistance of imps which he would send them. Imagine getting imps from the fairy pits of hell with Amazon Prime. Do you get it? Okay, I'll stop. Accusations of Eleanor and Mary stood as follows: bewitching and tormenting in a diabolical manner the wife of Robert Wise until she died, killing 4-year-old Elizabeth Gorham by witchcraft, bewitching to death one Charles Ireland of Southwick, to which they pleaded not guilty. First evidence presented to the court was of Widow Peake, as she and 2 other women observed Eleanor and Mary in prison. Widow Peake said that around midnight, a little white thing, the size of a cat, appeared in the room, which then sat in Mary's lap, at which point they heard Mary say, pointing towards Eleanor, that she was the one that killed Mrs. Wise by sticking needles in an effigy that she had made in her image, until it was completely destroyed. Mrs. Evans spoke of seeing Eleanor looking out the window the day Mrs. Wise fell ill, saying she had done it now and will be sending the devil a New Year's gift that night. Same night, Mrs. Wise passed over after great torment. A supporting piece of evidence was presented. Apparently, Eleanor and Mary came to Mrs. Wise telling her that she is a fool for choosing to live as she does, convincing her to take their help. The very same night after she consented to their help, she was visited by 2 black imps, who then for several nights on end would repeatedly come back and suck on her lower parts, till she was withered and barely alive, at which point she requested for Mr. Danks, the minister, to pray by her for several nights. The imps left after that, which he did not recover. A second charge was for the strange occurrence with Charles Ireland. Charles was apparently behaving out of manner for 12 days, at which point he started to bark. Once he recovered, he started to describe Mary Phillips and Eleanor Shaw as orchestrators of his symptoms, though he had never seen them in his life. His mother was advised to fill a bottle with his pins and needles, then bury it under the house hearth, which the witches responsible would come looking for, as it would prevent them from affecting the person. Which Eleanor and Mary apparently did, confessing to their involvement and promising they would not do it again. Sadly, the boy did end up dying the next day. Those circumstances are odd and go against the accusations made towards Mary and Eleanor, pointing the finger towards his family, as the trial records show he was, quote, so violently handled that he died in 2 hours' time, end quote. Personally, that doesn't seem like witchcraft, but a child that has been tormented by someone much closer to him. Third charge against him was for killing of Elizabeth Gorham. Her father had lost her as well as several of his livestock to the spells done by Eleanor and Mary. The evidence were 2 constables of Glapthorne named William Boss and John Southwell, who threatened the 2 accused witches with death, receiving the confession for the death of Elizabeth Gorham. Here is the actual confession from the court. That living in one house together, they contracted with the devil about a year ago to sell their souls to him, upon condition he would enable them to do what mischief they desired, against whom they pleased, either in body, goods, or children, upon which the same night they had each of them 3 imps sent them as they were going to bed, and at the same instant the devil appeared to them in the shape of a tall black man, and told them that these imps would always be at their service, either to kill man, woman, child, hog, cow, sheep, or any other creature when they pleased to command them, provided they let them suck their flesh every night. Which being agreed to, the devil came to bed to them both, and had carnal knowledge of them, as if a man, only with this difference, instead of being warm, his embrace was very cold and unpleasant. And at the next morning they sent 4 of their imps to kill 2 horses of one John Webb, of the said town of Glapthorne, because he openly said they were witches, and accordingly the 2 horses were found dead in a pond the same day. And 2 days after this they killed 4 great hogs after the same manner, belonging to Matthew Gorham, because he said they both looked like witches. And not thinking this revenge sufficient, the next day after they sent 2 imps apiece to destroy his child, being a little girlie, of which about 4 years of age, which was done accordingly in 24 hours' time, notwithstanding all the skill and endeavour of able doctors to preserve it. They further confessed that if the said imps were not constantly employed to the mischief, they had not their healths, but when they were employed, they were very healthful and well. They further added that the said imps did often tell them in the night time, in a hollow, whispering, low voice, which they plainly understood, that they should never feel hell torments, and that they had killed a horse and 2 cows of one widow Brockton, because she denied them some pescados last year, for which they had also struck her daughter with lameness, which would never be cured as long as either of them lived, and accordingly she has continued so ever since. Now we're getting into imprisonment and execution, which was also an interesting part. There are some funny moments in there. These two, I mean, they knew how to have fun, okay? They made the best of the worst situation, I guess. With consent from Mary, Eleanor said that the devil visited them several times after they signed the contract with him, in the shape of a tall black man, each time bringing them new imps. Imps which were of 3 colors, some red, some black, and some brown. To my understanding, Eleanor said that the imps would suck their blood or take a piece of their flesh from their private parts each night, which was apparently proven upon their arrest, so I guess they were tested or checked. Eleanor recounted that with the assistance of imps, they often killed men, women, and children, confessing that by using enchantments and witchcraft, they killed 15 children, 8 men, 6 women, in the span of 9 months, though none of the victims were suspected to die of witchcraft besides 2 children and 1 woman. But it doesn't end there. No. They had also bewitched to death 40 hogs of multiple poor people, 100 sheep, 18 horses, and 30 cows, to the point of completely ruining several families. Their wickedness continued in prison, as one day Mr. Laxon and his wife were passing by the prison, looking in at Eleanor and Mary. Eleanor began to explain how the devil left her in trenches as he did all his servants, after which she began to mutter words in an unknown language for about 2 minutes, after which time Mrs. Laxon's clothes turned over her head, quote, smock and all, in a most strange manner, and stood so exposed her nakedness to the people, end quote. To which occurrence Eleanor began to laugh, as anyone would. Another account told by Mr. Ralph Davis of Northampton in his letter to Mr. William Simmons, merchantin of London, tells of Mary and Eleanor bewitching a prison guard who threatened them with iron to dance naked for an hour in the prison yard. With pranks like this and a few other, they became so infamous during their imprisonment that no one would dare say a word against them, which is also why their execution was rushed. Minister that was in charge of their redemption could not get them to pray or repent for their wickedness, so that to the very moment they died, they were boasting of their master, the devil. Court and jury held a sentencing at which both Mary and Eleanor denied they had made those confessions and were not responsible for the charges made against them. After the jury made their decision, they were charged with willful murder and witchcraft, which court approved the day after sentencing them to the gallows till almost dead, then burning them. We only have a couple of days here in between their trial and execution. I couldn't conclude the length of the actual trial, but I would presume it was not as extensive as the ones we see these days. Letters that Ralph sent to William are dated as March 8th, which places about 9 days between their sentencing and execution. Might sound dark, but it took them so little to accuse them of these crimes, and then they wait with the execution. I would presume they would want to stop their evilness as soon as possible, but I guess not. The actual story is taken from the 2 letters written by said Rolf to the merchant in London called William, one presenting the actual trial, while the other is talking about the actual execution. So this is where the story actually came from, and that's why the letters are so important to this story. Now let's finish this off. Carried out to gallows on Saturday the 17th of March 1705, asked to repent one last time, Eleanor and Mary began to swear and curse all those around. By the account, they not only confessed to their crimes but called out on the devil to save them. Minister asked them to pray, to which they began to laugh. Sheriff rushed their execution when he saw this show. So they are hung, and while coming to their last breath, set ablaze. Quote, died in his service to the terror of all people who were eyewitnesses of their dreadful and amazing exits. End quote.